When they thought they could judge us, they forgot who we are. The human voice echoed through the grand chamber, sharper than any blade. Before the golden throne, 3 human representatives stood tall, not kneeling, not begging, staring straight into the eyes of those who had ruled the galaxy for millennia. That day, humanity did not plead innocent. That day, humanity bared its fangs. And the council? The council was about to learn fear for the very first time. You are charged with violating Article 7 of the Galactic Accord, unauthorized military action on a protected planet. The voice of High Regent Izura boomed across the hall, flawless, cold, absolute. We acted because you remained silent, answered Commander Eli Voss, humanity's lead envoy, his gaze steady, his tone ironclad that a wave of murmurs rolled through the council chamber. Beings that had never known hunger, war, or death. Not until they met humans. You believe yourselves above our law? No, Voss replied. We believe we're capable of doing what's right, even when the law is afraid to. For the briefest second, Regent Izura, wings gleaming, eyes burning with pale fire, hesitated. No species in council history had ever spoken with such defiance. No, not defiance. Conviction. Then you accept the consequences? She asked. We're human, Voss said, voice low and resonant. Consequences raised us. We carry them in our blood. The silence in the chamber grew heavy. Ancient beings exchanged glances and used to confrontation, especially from a species so young. So, feral, Izura leaned forward on her golden throne, wings shifting ever so slightly, a movement that, in her culture, meant dangered. And what, Commander Voss, would you say to the billions who fear what you've become? Voss didn't blink. That fear is earned. Gasps rippled through the chamber. One delegate, a crystalline being from the Tylerii sector, stood abruptly. This is madness. Your kind leveled an entire pirate fleet in less than 6 hours. Voss turned his head slowly. They took children. We took their future. The Tylerii fell silent. Izura rose from her throne, armor shimmering like molten stars. Her eyes narrowed, voice a whisper now, yet somehow more threatening than any shout. What are you trying to prove? Voss stepped forward. Just once. That we remember. Izura's brow furrowed. Remember what? What it means to bleed. What it means to suffer. What it means to never be given mercy and still survive. You sit on golden thrones in cities built on peace, but you forget the foundation of that peace. It was forged by war and pain and instinct. He pauses. You fear us, not because we break the law, but because we remind you of what you once were, before you traded strength for comfort. The room is still now, every breath measured, every eye on him. Humanity had just turned the tables. Izura stared down at him, jaw tight. Her voice, when it came, was colder than vacuumed. We gave you a seat at this council out of mercy. No, Voss snapped. You gave us a seat because you hoped to contain us. A shift in the lights. Subtle, but real. Then, a low pulse echoed through the chamber walls. Izura turned slightly, her gaze narrowing. The room was sealed. No outside signals allowed. No interference. And yet, a deep, calm voice echoed through the chamber speakers. Not Voss's voice. To the members of the High Council, this is Admiral Rhea Alcott of the Terran Vanguard. The fleets you monitored in our docking stations are no longer there. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates leapt from their seats. Security drones activated. The gold-armored guards of the throne flinched, but Izura did not. You dare move your ships without authorization? We didn't move them, Voss said, slowly turning toward the council. We dispersed them. Silenced. You think to start a war? No, Voss said, stepping into the center of the hall. We're ending an era. Izura's fists clenched. This is treason. This is a reminder. His voice was steel now. Humanity is not your pawn, not your tool, and certainly not your scapegoat. On cue, the chamber darkened. A hologram flared to life above the center platform. Not of a weapon, not of a fleet, but of a council prison camp. Inside, alien guards were dragging starving children, not human, into cages. Footage. Undeniable. Real. Izura's face paled. What is this? The truth, Voss said quietly, and the reason we acted. Humanity hadn't come to beg. They came to expose that TO hold the mirror up to those who claimed moral superiority that TO show the galaxy. You don't fear us because we're violent. You fear us because we'll do what you're too comfortable to do. For several heartbeats, no one spoke. The footage still hovered above them. A child with 4 eyes, limp in a human soldier's arms. A council sigil scorched into the wall behind them. It wasn't war footage. It was a rescue. And it was evidence that the council had looked away, or worse, allowed it. Then, finally, a voice broke the silence. This cannot be real. It was Chancellor Thral of the Kesari, his tendrils twitching nervously. It's very real, Voss replied. Archived, time-stamped, confirmed by 6 independent observers. And no, none of them human. Delegates began whispering, loudly now. Some shouted for an inquiry. Others demanded the footage be taken down. But it was too late. The illusion of moral superiority was dead. Izura stared at the hologram. Her hands were trembling. Voss took one final step forward, his voice now calm, cold, deliberate. You called us here to be judged. He turned slowly, locking eyes with each delegate. But you will answer for this. All of you. Suddenly, one delegate, High Envoy Sarek of the Drevians, stood up and faced Izura directly. How long did you know? Izura didn't answer. Sarek's voice rose. How long did you know? Izura's silence was damning. The chamber fractured in an instant. Half the delegates rose in protest, not against humanity, but against the council leadership itself. Others demanded the session be adjourned. One even called for Izura's resignation. And through it all, Commander Voss watched, unmoved, unflinching, because this wasn't just retaliation. This was strategy. This was humanity playing the long game, not with weapons, but with truth, with timing, and with righteous fury sharpened into precision. Izura arose slowly. Her voice was trembling, not with fear, but with something far more dangerous, wounded pride. You come into this chamber, full of accusations and threats. She motioned toward the footage still hovering in the air. And believe this will end with your vindication? The gold-armored guards shifted behind her. Tension crackled. This council has ruled for 10,000 years. We built this peace. And if you think a few tragic images will shake that foundation, Voss cut her off. We don't need to shake it. A pause. Everyone froze. We already built something stronger beneath it. Izura blinked. What? The chamber dimmed again, but this time, the hologram didn't show atrocities. It showed flags. Hundreds of them. Not human, but Drevian. Kesari. Bortari. Even Tylerii, species once loyal to the council, now displaying a new insignia alongside their own. A silver ring split by a single red line. The mark of the accordant. Voss turned slowly. While you sat in comfort, we forged alliances. While you played politics, we built trust. We don't rule by fear, Izura. His eyes locked with hers. We lead by memory. She stepped back, as if struck. This is mutiny. No, Voss's voice dropped to a whisper, somehow more powerful than any shout. This is what happens when you provoke something you never understood. In the shadows, one of Izura's own guards lowered his weapon. Delegates began standing, not in protest, but in recognition. Some saluted, some nodded in silence. Izura looked around her throne room, and for the first time in her immortal reign, she felt it. She had lost control. Izura's breath grew shallow. The chamber was slipping from her grasp. Alliances fracturing, loyalty bleeding out like light through cracked glass. But she wasn't High Regent for nothing. Her eyes flicked to a hidden panel built into the throne. She pressed it. A low, harmonic pulse spread across the walls. The ceiling darkened. Emergency protocol, Vedalock. All exits sealed. A voice rang through the chamber, artificial, cold, and ancient. All biologicals are now under containment. Tier 0, override engaged. Delegates panicked, weapons locked, and then, from beneath the throne, a column of metal rose. Inside it, a single obsidian cube, pulsing with faint red lines. Izura spoke, but now, she wasn't pleading. She was declaring, "You forget, Voss, we did not build peace through kindness. We enforced it." Voss didn't move. He'd seen this cube before. In classified files. In nightmares passed down from war survivors. You're activating the dead protocol? Izura smiled, a sad, bitter curve of the mouth. The moment humanity became a threat, this device was authorized. The cube pulsed again. Tier 0 confirmed. Planetary lockout in progress. Interstellar comms disabled. Around them, the delegates froze in terror. Izura stepped forward. You may have swayed minds, even hearts, but I will not let your kind shatter what we bled to build. If I must destroy this chamber, with all of us in it, to end your rebellion, she placed her hand on the cube. Then so be it. And that's when Voss spoke, calm, unhurried. You're right, Regent. Izura's hand paused. Voss stepped closer. You bled to build this galaxy, but you bled the wrong people. He raised his wrist, activated a command. From beneath the delegates' seats, a silent shimmer spread across the floor. Override code, Sigma Vanguard 7. The cube flickered. Its red glow dimmed. Izura stared down at it in disbelief. Authority transfer confirmed. Welcome, Admiral Voss. Her face, for the first time, cracked. How? You taught us fear, Voss said, his voice cutting through the silence. So we learned how to control it. He stepped up to the cube, standing just inches from her. You planned for war. We prepared for your fear of us. Izura stumbled back as the cube receded into the floor. Neutralized, the lockdown ended. The exits opened, and the chamber shifted, and no longer hers, and no longer the Council's. But humanity's move just concluded. Izura's hands hung at her sides, trembling. She looked around the chamber, searching, silently begging, for even a flicker of loyalty, but it was gone. Gone from the Drevians, who once pledged their fleets in her name. Gone from the Tylerii, who now stared at the floor, ashamed. Even her own guards avoided her gaze. The throne had never felt so far away. You think you've won, she whispered. Voss tilted his head slightly. This isn't about winning. He turned slowly, addressing the entire hall now. This is about truth. About what you all knew and ignored. He raised a hand. The hologram above flickered again. Now it showed transcripts, council internal messages. Leaked, stamped, dated, confirmed. Messages proving that Izura and her inner circle knew about the prison camps, had funded them, had classified the data to preserve galactic order. The chamber exploded with rage. You lied to us. You condemned children. This is genocide. Izura tried to speak, but her voice was drowned in fury. And then a sound cut through it all. Applause, slow, measured, metallic. From the shadows behind the delegates emerged a figure. Human, armored, insignia glowing faintly. Admiral Rhea Alcott, the architect behind humanity's fleets. Behind the movement. Behind the quiet rise beneath the council's feet. Well done, Commander, she said, nodding to Voss. Phase 1 is complete. Phase 1. Those words hit harder than any weapon. That Izura's eyes widened. There's more? Alcott stepped beside Voss. You thought this was the blow. No, this was just the mirror. She turned to the delegates. Now we begin the reconstruction. Voss raised his voice one last time. To every species in this chamber. Humanity does not seek to conquer. But we will not be ruled by silence. If you believe in justice, real justice, then stand with us. Not beneath us. Not against us. Delegates looked at each other. Some stepped forward, some knelt. Others just removed the crest of the council from their robes. Izura sank slowly back onto her throne. Not in authority, but in defeat, because she finally understood. This wasn't humanity's rise. It was the council's fall. As the chamber fractured and the old order dissolved, not all bowed. One delegate remained standing. Tall, cloaked in obsidian armor, with a face like carved stone. Primarch Velan of the Ilari Compact. One of the oldest species in the galaxy. He hadn't spoken the entire session. But now he stepped forward, voice low, serrated. You all disgust me. The chamber froze. You kneel before predators who dressed their vengeance in virtue. Voss's eyes narrowed. Velan wasn't speaking to the council. He was broadcasting to every Ilari warship across the sector. We did not climb to the stars by begging. We ruled through dominance, through fear, through strength. He turned his gaze directly to Voss. And I see strength in you, human, but no restraint, no code. You are apex beasts playing at diplomacy. Izura stirred in her seat, hope flickering in her broken eyes. But Alcott stepped forward calmly, voice like cold ironed. Velan, you attack us now, and you won't survive the echo." He smiled, teeth sharp, ancient, then let the stars burn. He vanished, teleported out of the chamber. Instantly, red alarms screamed through the council citadel. Off-world sensors activated. Incoming jump signatures. Alari Warfleet. 147 ships. Charging weapons. Delegates panicked. Izura looked up in horror. Even she didn't want this. Alcott turned to Vost. "He wants to paint us as conquerors. To make us prove him right." Vost nodded, then spoke. Calm, clear, unstoppable. "Then we'll do what we always do." He faced the chambered. "We'll show them what it means to stand our ground." He lifted his wrist. "Activate Aegis Protocol. Unlock Hades Array. Notify all Vanguard fleets. Authorization Omega." Silence. Then a deep rumble shook the chamber. Above the citadel, the clouds parted, and from orbit, the Terran Armada decloaked. Not hundreds, thousands. Ships forged from neutron glass. Engines pulsing with red-white fury. Weapons already tracking the Alari fleet. Alcott smiled faintly. They wanted to provoke the beast. She turned toward the sky. "Now let them see what happens when it wakes up." The chamber trembled from the vibrations of incoming warships, but no weapons fired. Not yet. The real war was still being fought in that room. Izura, pale and silent, turned toward Veland's now empty seat. "He'll tear everything apart." Her voice was cracked. "Small dot. Then stop him," Voss said, eyes locked on hers. "If you still have any loyalty left to this council, stop him." She looked at him, not as a ruler now, but as a woman who had sat too long on a throne built by feared. "He won't listen to me." "He doesn't have to," Voss said. He turned to the delegates. "But maybe he'll listen to all of you." Murmurs rose again, but this time, not with fear, with resolve. Delegate Sarek of the Drevians stood. "I propose a motion." Izura blinked. Sarek's voice rang out, amplified by the chamber's ancient system. Effective immediately, the Alari Compact is stripped of all voting power. Their war declaration is not sanctioned. And if Veland engages in hostile action, he is no longer a representative, but a war criminal. Gasps. Then silence. Then one by one, delegates stood. Hands raised on a majority vote. Izura didn't even oppose it. She just nodded that it was the first right thing she had done in decades. Then, Alcott stepped forward again. "And what of the old guard?" Her voice echoed. "Those who knew about the prison camps? Who hid behind Izura's command?" A silence followed, sharper than any alarm. Voss didn't need to say anything. The delegates knew. The reckoning wasn't over. Now it was turning inward. Names were spoken. Officials removed. Old alliances dissolved like mist and sunlight. And in the center of it all, humanity stood still, not claiming the throne, not demanding power, but watching a broken empire finally start to rebuild itself, through shame, truth, and fired. Izura, still seated, looked up at Voss once more. "What happens now?" Voss's answer came without hesitation. "Now." He looked toward the great sealed doors of the chamber, the ones that once only opened for the powerful. "Now you get to walk through the galaxy you built, and live with it." As the final vote tally flickered across the ancient walls, confirming Veland's status as a rogue actor, the heavy doors of the chamber hissed open. Delegates exhaled. Some left in stunned silence. Others rushed out to send messages back home. Izura remained still, her throne no longer a seat of command, but a cage of memory. Voss turned to Alcott. "Get the documents ready. Every prisoner, every shipment, every cover-up. The galaxy will want proof." Alcott nodded. "Already done. They'll see the truth." But then, something felt off. Too quiet. The guards posted along the inner archways weren't speaking. Some weren't even moving. Alcott narrowed her eyes. "Those aren't our people." Voss's head snapped toward the left flank, and then he saw it. Alari agents, disguised in golden council armor, standing too rigid, waiting, and then they moved. Explosively, a flash grenade detonated in the chamber's center. White heat and silence flooding the air. Delegates screamed. Guards fell. Smoke. Chaos. But amid the confusion, Voss didn't panic. That he moved through the smoke like a blade. Hand to his wristband. Level 2 breach. Hall of Order. Seal inner chamber. Lock exits. A shimmer of red energy collapsed around the chamber's edge. A security dome. They were trapped inside. But so were the attackers. Izura sat frozen as two Alari operatives rushed toward her, but before they reached her, a single pulse rang out. Alcott. She dropped one with a sidearm shot to the throat, spun, and disarmed the second with a brutal elbow. Voss reached her side a second later. Velan wants a spectacle. Then let's give him the wrong one, Alcott said, eyes cold. Voss raised his voice, cutting through the chaos. Delegates, get behind the upper seal. Anyone who can't fight, stay down. The remaining guards regrouped. Real ones, humans and allies. The Alari didn't expect resistance like this. They were counting on fear. Instead, they met training. Rage. Memory. Humanity. 10 minutes later, it was over. The floor was scorched. The smoke hung heavy. 3 Alari lay dead. 2 unconscious. 1 was taken alive. Voss stood over him, blood on his jaw, voice lowered. Tell Velan this. You tried to rot the council from within. We cured it. Now we're coming for you. The Alari hissed in defiance. But behind his eyes, there was doubt now. Fear. The kind that only humans could instill. In the quiet after the attack, Izura finally rose from her throne, wounded, ash-streaked, and, older than ever. She looked around the chamber, at the humans, at the allies, at the galaxy reshaping around her. And for the first time in her life, she said something no one ever thought she could say. What would you have me do? And Voss? He just looked at her and said, start by listening. The interrogation chamber was silent, soundproofed, shielded, isolated beneath the citadel itself. Commander Voss stood behind the glass, arms crossed, watching the captured Alari through a reinforced pane. Inside, the operative sat motionless, breathing slow, unshaken, waiting, like Velan trained them to. Alcott entered beside him, datapad in hand. Biometric scan shows no fear response. No deviation in pulse. Ultra-conditioned. Then we don't ask questions, Voss said. We give them answers. He stepped into the room. No guards. No weapons. Just presence. The Alari looked up, expecting threats. Torture. Bravado. Instead, Voss sat down across from him, laid a single device on the table, pressed it. A hologram flickered to life. Velan. Not live, but recorded. In a private meeting. With Izura. If the Drevian colonies resist, cut off their food routes. No one will intervene. Humanity's too busy pretending it's evolved. The Alari blinked. Where did you, everything you were told about us, Voss interrupted, was filtered through cowards. He leaned forward. You think Velan fights for order? For honor? He fights to keep the galaxy just broken enough for his kind to rule. The Alari's eyes narrowed, but something inside shifted. Doubt. A seed. Planted. Later, in the central chamber, Izura watched the footage again, not of Velan, but of herself, authorizing silence, overlooking atrocities, dismissing reports. The face on the screen, her face, looked foreign now. Aliened, she turned to Alcott. Was there ever a moment where you trusted us? Alcott didn't answer right away. We hoped. She paused, but hoping unarmed humans would be safe in a galaxy built on hierarchy? That was the real fantasy. Izura nodded slowly. And then, she surprised them. I want to testify. Voss looked at her, expression unreadable. Why? Izura raised her chin, voice steady now. Because history will remember this moment. And I refuse to be remembered as the silence between the screams. Outside, reconstruction had already begun. The council crest was being removed from the outer wall, not destroyed, but replaced. A new symbol, a ring, open at the bottom, unfinished, symbolizing the work still ahead. The Grand Forum had not been used in over 200 years. Once a ceremonial hall for declarations of peace, it was now converted into a live broadcast center, streaming to every inhabited system, every colony, every outpost. Billions were watching. At the center of the forum stood a single podium, a soft white light above it. Izura stepped into that light, not as a regent, not even as a leader, just a witness. Voss and Alcott watched from a secured observation deck, side by side. No words spoken, just the shared weight of the moment. Izura began to speak, and her voice was not what they remembered. It wasn't rehearsed, it wasn't cold, it was raw. For 10,000 years, we told ourselves that peace was maintained through unity. But unity became uniformity. Justice became convenience. and silence became survival. She paused at no script. No teleprompter, just truth. I oversaw the silencing of whistleblowers. I authorized blind eyes turned to suffering, not out of cruelty, but out of fear. Fear of change, of collapse, of losing the control that made us feel important. Gasps echoed from the crowd, some shocked, some moved, some furious. She continued, but then humanity came, not seeking dominance, not demanding obedience, just unwilling to kneel. A beat. They forced us to remember who we used to be, when courage meant more than comfort. And though I resisted, I now understand. The galaxy doesn't need rulers. It needs guardians of the truth. Silence followed. Real silence. The kind that happens when lies finally run out of air. The broadcast cut. And within an hour, the first waves began. Delegates across fringe systems renounced old alliances. Citizens demanded access to new human-led Accord charters. Former council colonies declared independent elections and the Alari Compact. Silent. But for how long? Back in the Citadel, Voss met Azura outside the chamber. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't deserve it. But she did say one thing before walking away. They'll come for you, you know. Not just Velan. Others. Old powers. Dark ones. You've cracked the shell. Voss nodded. Then let them come. He looked out the window, where a new flag was being raised beside the old one. We're done hiding behind peace. Now we're building it. For real. 3 days after Azura's testimony, hope spread like wildfire. Systems that once feared human involvement now petitioned for Accord membership. Broadcasts of joint operations, food convoys, and diplomatic missions flooded public channels. On the surface, things were changing. But underground, something darker stirred. In a deep-buried relay station on Ternes 3, far from the Citadel's influence, an encrypted channel crackled to life. A figure stood alone, wrapped in black ceremonial robes, face hidden, voice masked. A voice echoed from the transmitter. The council falls. And what rises in its place? Wears a human face. The robed figure answered. They think they've won the galaxy's heart. Then take their heart. Silence. Then a file was transferred. Propaganda packets, psychological attack vectors, deep fakes, and targeted narratives. Make them doubt. Make them divide. And then the connection ended. That night, across several neutral systems, videos began circulating. Slick. Professional. Controlled. They showed human soldiers, distorted footage, executing alien civilians. They showed a voice claiming to be Voss. Obedience is peace. It wasn't real, but real enough. Within hours, riots broke out on outer colonies. Former council loyalists planted bombs in humanitarian convoys. Voss watched the footage from a secure room. Alcott stood behind him, arms folded. You said they'd come, she said quietly. Voss nodded. This isn't war. No, she replied. It's the prelude. A knock. A messenger entered, trembling. Pale. He handed Voss a datapad. One message only. He surfaced. Below it, Velan's voice print. The message, you may lead them now. But they bleed. And I will show them how. Back on the Citadel, Azura watched the growing chaos on the news feeds. Her face tight. She whispered to herself. They're not afraid of humans taking power. They're afraid of what happens when humans show mercy. Because mercy, that's something the old order never survived. Velan thought fear would win. He thought lies, division, and shadows would crack the fragile alliance humanity had forged. And for a time, it almost did. Riots burned. Systems pulled back. Rumors swirled that the Accord was just a polished empire in disguise. But then came the testimony. Not from Voss, not from Alcott, but from an alien. Chancellor Rao, the same delegate who once called humanity monsters. He stood before the galaxy and said, they made mistakes. But when the time came to protect the weak, it was humans who stood. And when the time came to show mercy, it was humans who spared us, even when they could have ruled us. The transmission went viral across 1,000 worlds. The propaganda cracked, and Velan was exposed. Cornered on a former council bunker moon, Velan activated his final contingency. A virus designed to destabilize the Accord's AI infrastructure. Hospitals, transports, civilian systems. But what he didn't know? Human engineers had already anticipated him. His signal pulsed outward. It was looped, traced, and redirected straight into his bunker's own systems. The last thing Velan saw was his own face on every screen. Every word he'd ever said in secret played back. Public. Undeniable. Then the lights shut off, and silence followed. On the Citadel, as the news of Velan's death spread, Voss stood alone at the window overlooking the rebuilt chamber. Alcott entered, quiet. "It's done." Voss nodded. "No," he said, "it's just beginning." He looked at the stars, no longer distant, no longer indifferent. "We didn't rise to power today. We rose to responsibility." Behind him, a new generation of delegates filed in. Human, alien, mixed. No thrones. No pedestals, just a circle. One seat for every voice. Izura wasn't there. She had left months ago to live among the colonies. To watch, listen, and, for the first time, learn. Her legacy was no longer powered, it was memory. And so, when the historians wrote of this day, they didn't call it the fall of the Council. They didn't call it the rise of humanity. They called it what it truly was. The day the Council regretted provoking humanity, and the day the galaxy remembered what humans do when pushed. They endure. They fight. And then they lead.